Circuits are something I have to do as part of the curriculum, and they come away going, I'm inspired. I can just see so many ways that I can use these, tape block. You want to make a whole city with garage and lights and traffic lights, you can do it.
You're listening to Around the School Table, hosted by me, Steve Davis, and proudly powered by Zuno Suite. We'll be bringing together the many voices shaping primary and secondary education across Australia, from principals and teachers to education thought leaders and system innovators. Whether you're in the classroom, the staff room, or the boardroom, this is your podcast to be informed, inspired, and connected. Today on Around the School Table, we're joined by Kirsten Ellis from Monash University, whose innovative tape blocks kits are making STEM learning truly inclusive for students of all abilities. Kirsten's creative approach helps every child collaborate, problem solve and experiment, whether they're working with motors, lights or even Lego. If you're curious about practical ways to blend accessibility and creativity in your classroom, I think this episode's going to offer some inspiration and some fresh ideas for educators everywhere. Kirsten, welcome to Around the School Table.
Hi, Steve. Nice to be here.
Now, Kirsten, you have a mantra which is about solving real-world problems for people with disabilities. And to that end, it looks to me, on the evidence I've seen, that you're being very creative about that. We're going to be talking about tape blocks, but before we get to them, I've been told you started your journey with conductive tape and conductive jigsaw puzzle pieces. Can you share us a little bit of that before we get into tape blocks?
So in order to produce tape blocks, I had a vision that I was going to create an accessible circuit making kit that anyone could use, except I didn't know how I was going to do that. So it started with, I was trying all sorts of different things. This expectation that you get there straight away is just not correct. There's hours of getting things wrong before you get things right. So the process, I was trying things like putting layers of tinfoil or attaching tinfoil to the back and then of plastic that was at different sheets so that you had to put the positive bit would only connect when you're at a certain height. Using a steel-backed, something with magnets that you stuck it to, and that created the rest of the circuit. Jigsaw puzzles. I had all sorts of things. And even when I came up with the original version of what is now tape blocks, I then ran it through, do we make it, they're currently kids' foam blocks, kids' building blocks that you can buy at, any toy shop. I actually went through, do I make them laser cut pieces? Do I make them wood blocks? Do I make them, what is the best material? And I actually went back to the foam blocks because I can go to a workshop and I can carry 200 tape blocks in with me because they're really, really lightweight, where some of the other options were just too heavy to carry around. And of course, like foam blocks come in such fantastic colours that actually they're really appealing. And then you can get all black blocks as well as you want. So it gives lots and lots of choice and variety in the materials. So yeah, we didn't go straight there. I never go straight there when I'm building stuff. It's always I usually make everything 3 times at least.
I think it's very fitting that you have that mindset when you're working with the flow of electrical current, because Thomas Edison was known for saying, if I make 999 mistakes, that just means I'm 999 steps closer to getting there.
Yep, absolutely.
And just before we move to tape blocks proper, I'm getting memories of my old Tandy 50-in-1 kit when I grew up, where you had little wires and special programs you can connect capacitors to resistors. I mean, it's a more involved and fiddly version than what you've created, but I think the concept is the same, of exercising our imagination and creativity to get this flow of current to where we want it to go to yield a result. Is that fair enough?
Yes. Absolutely. And it's about sparking imagination and building confidence in the fact that you can do those things. Look, I did make this, I connected these things together and they did work. Isn't this exciting? Now I'd be interested to explore what else I could do. And that's sort of the whole philosophy around like tape blocks, but the learning electronics by curiosity and creativity.
And I love the deliberate use of the term sparking imagination.
I hadn't even noticed.
Now, tape blocks, they're essentially made possible with a relatively strong conductive tape that's actually made from nickel, which is, was it Ni on the periodic table from memory? Why didn't you use copper? Because that would have been the first thing I would have thought of if I was thinking about conducting electricity.
So people do use um, an like a copper tape. The first time I used it, I was so excited. I was like, oh, this is going to be fantastic. And then I put my connections together and they didn't work. And some of the time they work, some of the time they don't work. The tape breaks, the tape doesn't go around corners. So, and you can generally only use the tape for, 3 days and then it anodizes and you don't get a proper connection. And so, so I went, oh, I'm so disappointed. Right. So when I came across this, so it's actually electromagnetic shielding material is what I'm using. So there's some of it in your phone to protect components from other components so that they don't get interference. But it's a really strong tape and it's flexible and it's a nickel copper, so it's got the metal in it, but it doesn't anodize. So I have tape blocks that are 5 years old and I can still use them, which is very cool. So it's not the question of is there something wrong with my copper tape or my materials? It's like you use it every single time and it's going to work.
I think we need to paint a picture for people now so they can grasp what we're talking about. I mean, your website has a great video right on the homepage at tapeblock.com, but it's used to connect lights, fans, little motors that vibrate, etc. But before we get there, can you paint a picture?
An audio description. In my left hand,
Yes.
I have a 7 centimeter by 3.5 centimeter foam block, a kid's building block, one that you'd buy at a toy store. It's foam, so it's quite squishy and they're quite bright colors. So in my left hand, I have a red one. In my right hand, I have a green one. They both have 2 strips of tape around them of this silver colored tape. And the right hand one has a light, an LED underneath the tape. The left hand one is connected to a USB cable and a couple of alligator clips, and that's providing me with the power. So when I put the red block, which is power, and connect it, just pop it together with the green block, which is my light, it lights up. And if you're using a bicolor LED, whichever way it is around, you don't have to worry about getting those connections plus and minuses right. The first block that you're going to use will work both directions. So it will either come up red with a red light or come up with a blue light. Done. You've made your first circuit. And I can guarantee that everyone, the first time they put it together, they're like, oh, wow. Like it doesn't matter who you are. It's so exciting getting that light working and really realizing how simple it is to make a circuit. They're not scary. They're really easy. You just a couple of foam blocks and a bit, few pieces, and you've got a circuit. And that's super exciting. And then you go, oh, now I've made that. What else can I put together? So I've got some, and this really was the way I went about creating them. There were some vibration motors sitting around in the lab. So I'm like, oh, I wonder if I can connect a vibration motor to this. Exactly the same technique, connect a vibration motor so that, you know, you just connect it and it vibrates. And it's like, oh, wow, now I can feel that my circuit is working, which is then super useful for blind children.
Yes, because they get that feedback, that tactile feedback.
Yes. So what that means is then blind kids, because all it takes to make these blocks is that you move the tape around, wrap it around the blocks, you put the components underneath or on top, all of a sudden blind kids can make circuits from scratch.
So when you first get the kit,
Yep.
the tape is not wrapped around anything,
No, you get to do it for yourself.
and there's an array of starter blocks, and then you can build from there?
Yes. So the idea is there's enough blocks in a kit to make like a couple of light blocks, a vibration block. The blue blocks are the fan blocks because they have a hole drilled in them. And the fans, when I started making them experimenting, I was using those big chunky fans exactly like you would have had on your kit when you were a kid, right? Now I use these little like I think they're like 6 millimeter drone motors.
Oh, of course.
There's these little tiny motors that we can now use. So I use those. You can get your fan. I 3D print the little spinners, so they're like a little snowflake. And then you've still got lots and lots of LEDs left in your kit. So you can then start to put them on other types of substrates or other types of materials. So you could put them on, for example, you can make a bracelet on bubble wrap. And if you wrap lights in bubble wrap, the light diffuses. So it shimmers everywhere. Do you know what I mean? Or you can use any sort of iridescent, transparent material.
Yes.
You get those beautiful light shedding patterns and things like that.
I wish I knew about that before our family went to see Taylor Swift last year.
Yes, exactly. You can make costumes. You can make your own costumes. I actually made a complete bubble wrap dress, which that's what you do during lockdowns, I guess.
Well, yes, I've heard you can make clothing. I mean, I was imagining putting a wonderful, dense, rectangular space together tightly in a frame and then hanging it on a wall. And then you've got this illuminating, buzzing, fan-blowing array, very Salvador Dali.
Sounds fantastic to me. And you can do all sorts of things with that. So I put them into dry felting and all sorts of other things as well.
And you can make animals?
You can make the cutest little characters. So if you say, do you want to do electronics with me? People are like, yeah. If you say, do you want to make a character with a light up nose? Absolutely. So it's around actually connecting. And this is a difference between tape blocks and your electronic kits. The electronic kit, you can make the circuit, that's it. With tape blocks, you can make the circuit and then you can build it into something of interest. So I've had kids making, emergency vehicles with red and blue flashing lights or, characters with light up noses. I am personally very keen on dragons. So I have lots of dragons with, red noses that light up and everything. So it's really about connecting that imaginative play and that creation to the coolness of making circuits. So people often come to my workshops going, circuits are something I have to do as part of the curriculum. And they come away going, I'm inspired. I know I can just see so many ways that I can use these, tape blocks and the tape blocks, the block of a home is just the start. You want to make a whole city with garage and lights and traffic lights, you can do it.
Still juggling forms the old-fashioned way? Say hello to Student Forms by Zuno. You can create, collect, and manage all your student forms online in one simple, secure platform. Save time, stay organised, and quick access everything you need, anytime. Visit zuno.com.au and see how Student Forms by Zuno can work for your school.
I believe amid your initial motivations you were mindful of children with motor skill challenges, such as cerebral palsy, and also kids with vision impairment. But it turns out these tape blocks are quite inclusive, and you even advocate using them in a mixed classroom because it encourages exploration, questions, which coloured lights use more power, all those sorts of things.
It's one of those things where if you create something specifically for accessibility, it's actually really good for everyone because they're not scary. They're great for teachers because what you can do is in a class of 25 people, you can have them making their little blocks on their own. And if you color code them, then if someone's holding up 2 green blocks,
yep,
then they're never going to get a circuit because they've got no red block. And what's red block? Red block's power.
Yeah.
So you can stand at the back of at the front of the class, at the back of the class, you can go, what do you think you're missing from that circuit? you seem to have a light and a vibration motor, but you've got no power. Do you know what I mean? So it actually helps with classroom management. And it also means that the child with a disability in the class doesn't have to do a different activity. They can do exactly the same activity as everyone else.
Just as an aside, I think we all need a few extra red blocks in our life. During COVID 2020, you distributed 500 kits for the National Science Week, and kids even got to use tape blocks online. So it really is quite accessible even during a lockdown. Am I right in understanding that Google even sponsored you at one stage?
Yep. So I am part of the Google Computer Science Education Outreach Summit each year. So I actually go up there and I run an activity within that summit, which is always popular because it's always very hands-on. And I think that the hands-on nature of learning is what we need more of. Get kids off screen, really engage them in the making process. So I go up there and run an activity up there. And they sponsored me to run workshops for 150 special education teachers. So I sent kits out to people so that they had the materials they needed. And then we had one session on campus as well for locals. And then so I got all this outreach on showing teachers of special education how to go about making these circuits with kids, and hopefully broadening. I have a real agenda around broadening the expectations of what we can do with people with disabilities or children with disabilities. So the idea is that it's not that children can't make circuits with disabilities, it's that the activity is wrong. We just need to change the way we do it. When we change the way we do it, everyone can do it. And there's lots of things like that. There's lots of things where actually, if we think about it a little bit, we can modify it and make it better for everyone.
Just before I moved on to the Google question, because I wanted to get to the bottom of that, you'd started to talk about the joy of having something that can be in a mixed classroom, for example. I also hear that you can put this tape around Lego, for crying out loud, if you want to, which is a really compelling crossover aspect, integrating tape blocks with familiar objects around the place like Lego. Do you think that the flexibility you've built into this helps bridge the gap between assistive tech and what we call mainstream learning?
Once you know the tape block technique, which is 2 layers of tape parallel to each other and then just stack them on, you can stack them up, you can stack them long ways. There's just so much flexibility built into that system that you can start to really expand. You can make cards, you can make candles, you can make, birthday cakes that you don't have to worry about spitting on. You can use Lego, you can use, and you can connect them to microbits as well. So it's the cheapest breakout board you'll ever get on a microbit. A microbit has 4 holes in it, 3 of them are for pins, and then you can turn the tape blocks on and off. So it's a really nice way of introducing physical programming as well within the system that a lot of people are already using.
Imagine this, Christmas morning, you've wrapped up all the Christmas presents under the tree and there are no names on them, but they all have these 2 lovely silver broad ribbons around them, which is your nickel tape, and they're connected to LEDs that have different colours. And when you connect them to a red thing, they light in different colours, and that colour represents who the present is for.
That is one that I had not thought of, but that's brilliant.
It might actually make me want to wrap Christmas presents again. I want to go big picture here. Where do you see tape blocks, or even just the principles behind it, in the next 5 years? Would it look like, say, for inclusive design to become a starting point rather than an exception in STEM?
I think we're moving that way. I think we are actually moving that way. And I have this concept of natively built accessible. So tape blocks were built to be accessible as opposed to adaptive, which is where you take something that already exists and try to modify it in a way that kind of works for people with disability. The more things we can build as native accessible, the better. And so they just, you build them for people as a thing for accessibility, but actually it works better for everyone. And there's lots of things, there's a number of things that were built for people with disabilities that are actually really useful for everyone else. Text on your phone, That's sort of harps back to teletext machine for deaf people. I can see you'd never thought about that before.
No, you're making more connections.
And a lot of your voice-driven systems, that again started as an assistive product and has become much more mainstream. And of course, if they become mainstream, they become cheaper for people with disabilities and more accessible to everyone, to more people. So it's a win-win situation.
Look, I already think it is a growing up in all of us in society, because even before, I was just doing something simple around the office, and I thought, gee, I take this for granted. I could lose this ability, and I have never thought about it. I've never stopped to give pause or thanks for the range of movement and skill I have. And for us not to be thinking like that, it's like the little child holding the fingers up over their eyes saying, you can't see me, because the reality is there. And I think we've been around the planet long enough to grasp this. So I think it's very heartening that you're seeing it from where you sit, that this principle is starting to eke its way through as the default starting mindset.
And I have been in assistive technology since nearly 30 years, and I can say there has been a absolutely mind shift in the last few years of just making things accessible for everyone all the time.
Yes.
So as a starting point as opposed to an add-on.
The only thing we have to worry about is going all the way and letting AI do everything for us and turning our brains off altogether. But that's a different story for a different day.
Absolutely.
Kirsten, what's the next step for tape blocks? Are you looking to commercialise that out there? And there might be someone listening who works with large school groups, maybe even Lego. Should any of these people reach out to you?
So Tape Blocks is currently available online, and there's a story to that too. I originally thought if I just put videos online, everyone would be able to make them. But I buy random electronic components all the time and find it quite normal to do. Most people, it's a little more worrying, so it's easier if you provide a kit of appropriate components as a starting point. So I started, and I built the first ones on a grant. If I don't have a grant, I can't offer them anywhere. So I made the website, videos, kitted them up so that people can get them if they would find them useful for their class or, kids with disabilities within families. So they are available at tapeblock.com. I have just started distributing, or there's a distributor interested in actually taking them on from a school supplier. So that's an option. But I got to say, I'm not the best manufacturer ever. I mean, and it's this point between, the home business kind of thing on top of what I already do versus the, moving into manufacturing these things at a greater scale is definitely not my strength. But I'm learning as I go. So if there was someone interested in manufacturing and distributing, that would be awesome. But otherwise, I will plod along and learn a whole range of new skills. So looking for distributors, because it really is that too much research. We find what works, and then that bridging the gap to actually get it out into the community, so where it can actually have impact, is super critical. And often we miss that bridge.
I will say one thing that's in your favour. Unlike Lego, I think if you trod on one of these at night time in bare feet, they wouldn't be as painful.
There's got to be something said for that.
and they might light up. Actually, I did say that was the last question, but I can't leave. You've talked about red for power, blue for switches.
And okay, switch, green, light and vibration. So that if you go red for power, yellow for switch, green for your light or vibration, you know where the switch goes because it's like a traffic light.
Ah, okay.
And the blue is the exception to the rule because that's the one with the hole in it, which is the fan.
Okay, very good. And I will just say, a little birdie did tell me that if you were doing experiments as to which LED lights use the most power, it's blue.
Blue, it goes, red uses the least, then it's blue, then it's blue, green, white. White actually takes the most power.
Well, I wanted to finish on that enlightening note. Kirsten Ellis from Monash University, thank you very much for joining me around the school table.
Thank you very much, Steve.